Good afternoon to you, Mark out of HurricaneTrack.com here with your Hurricane Outlook and discussion, the afternoon version now for what is today, Monday, the 31st of July, 2017. We have a lot to talk about, so let's get into it quickly here. You see Emily over Florida. We'll get into this in more detail in a moment. Part of this overall frontal boundary that has draped itself across the region, and this is why Emily developed along that area of convergence and energy over very warm water of the Gulf of Mexico, the leading edge of another surge of Saharan air and dry, stable conditions all back through here. This looks like somebody is taking a hairdryer to a steamed up mirror. Very dry, stable air, you can tell. And I'm pointing that out, but I'm going to tell you once again, it is perfectly normal. Even as we get into the early part of August, we see Saharan air outbreaks often, sometimes even into September. It's just part of the way the Atlantic Basin works. If we didn't have it, we would have so many hurricanes that people just couldn't live at the coast, probably. Looking at a close-up of Emily this afternoon, it made landfall here in the Tampa Bay region, roughly speaking, and not far from Bradenton. And now it's inland over Florida, and it's really the southern two-thirds of the peninsula here where showers and thunderstorms are most prevalent. Upper-level winds not entirely conducive, nor are they too strong. So Emily's just going to be kind of caught in the middle there, and it'll try to re-strengthen some as it moves out over the Atlantic here over the next several hours, probably tomorrow morning, and we can look at that here. Maybe strengthening some over the western Atlantic, but I mean, you never know. It's come this far, so maybe it'll continue to overwhelm the odds, so to speak, and overcome those odds, and maybe it'll be stronger than what is forecast. But the good news, for now, it is not forecast after it leaves Florida to come very close to the Carolinas, for example, which, of course, is, we don't need anything along the Outer Banks considering the power outage situation out there. But we'll see. It just goes to show that situation in the Outer Banks. If you haven't heard, they're building a new bridge over the Oregon Inlet, and the construction company severed some transmission lines, and people in Ocracoke and Hatteras Island out here have been without power for quite a while. A state of emergency, all kinds of mayhem dealing with that, and it just shows you need to be ready. And you know what? If you're ready for hurricanes, you're ready for that. That's the simple way to put it. Looking at the loop here, the radar loop out of the Tampa radar, and the center of circulation here, kind of ill-defined overall as it's moved inland. A little bit of a convergent zone up here, south of Daytona Beach, southwest of there. Near Orlando, not directly related to the circulation of Emily, but sort of this overall frontal boundary and just all the moisture and energy that's moving around the region. If you're traveling through the area from Orlando to Tampa, either the Turnpike or I-95 down towards Miami and West Palm, and you know people that are doing that, just, let them know, slow down, watch out for those heavy downpours. These tropical downpours can be very, very blinding with the rainfall, so just be sure to take it easy. This whole mess will gradually move and eventually head offshore in the overnight hours towards tomorrow, and we'll have to watch and see what else happens along that frontal boundary. I often refer to those as grapevines, and you never know. Sometimes you get some sour grapes. I want to show you this. This is the last time we're going to look at this until December, when we start doing the off-season hurricane outlook and discussion. This is the equatorial temperature anomaly in the subsurface. So the surface is at the top up here, and then we're at 450 meters deep at the bottom. This is the eastern Pacific, and this is the western Pacific over here. And look at all of this cold anomaly that's showing up. Very little in the way of positive anomalies or departures from normal on the warm side. Left, those are almost all gone. You can forget about the El Niño for this year. It's not happening, and this is the last I'm going to mention it. In fact, we can go out with looking at this. The June reading from the SOI, and the SOI is the Southern Oscillation Index, and typically when you have low negative numbers, that's conducive for El Niño to develop, and when you have positive numbers, that's more of a La Niña. And in May, we started going down. In June, it was down further. But in July, positive 6.5, so a 15-point turnaround from June. The 30-day average is basically 7, the 90-day is basically 0, neutral, and the positive numbers almost 10 for today's contributor, the last day of July. So we can close the books on El Niño for 2017. This will be the last we talk about it. It is setting up for a probable busy Atlantic season, because when you don't have a warm equatorial Pacific, when this is not above normal and this is above normal, you put a check mark here and an X over here, this becomes more favorable overall. That doesn't mean you have to have hurricanes. It's just one of the background states that, if favorable, sets the stage for the possibility of more hurricane activity. I want to draw your attention to this up here. This was warmer than normal last week, and through that little nor'easter thing that came through, and the storminess up here, the trough and the anomalous low pressure over the east and the upper levels of the atmosphere, very similar to something we would have in the winter in July, has really caused the water temperatures to cool off up here, but they will rebound. Don't worry about that, but for now they have cooled off just a tad. In the Gulf of Mexico, remember Cindy, I talked about this back in June, made landfall up through here, stirred up the Gulf all through here, and now look at what we've got. Water temperatures over a large area of the Gulf of Mexico, in this color right here, 30 degrees Celsius or higher, and Emily will have churned things up through here a little bit. This shelf water, very easy to disturb and mix, and Emily will do that, but that too will probably rebound, and the Gulf is definitely very warm as we head into the peak months of the season. The Atlantic Basin here, for you folks up along the mid-Atlantic states, water temperatures are still a little too cold for my taste. I don't know how you like it, but low 70s and even some upper 60s, probably 68, 69 degrees Fahrenheit in a couple of spots. But along the Pamlico Sound and points south on this Atlantic seaboard, the Carolinas and Georgia, the water temperatures are in the low 80s. I was out at Riceville Beach yesterday in the evening, and it was very nice. Even with the lower dew points in the atmosphere, the water temperature of about 82 degrees was pretty good, I must say. I'll take that over 71 any day. Looking at the wide shot here, it's going to be about time to start watching this area more closely. We're not there yet, but it's getting close. You still see this Saharan air intrusion coming on out into the Atlantic, definitely. But you're starting to get this tilt to the intertropical convergent zone, this monsoon trough trying to set up out here and get the grapevine going. You notice over Africa, way over to the east here, almost over to the Ethiopian highlands. My goodness, the energy is starting to gather across this region, and there are factors coming into play with what's called a convectively coupled Kelvin wave, and the Madden Julian oscillation may be getting ready to reset. Basically, everything is being primed for the period from August through October to be potentially very busy. And I'm going to emphasize again, it's not a forecast. It's not, Mark said things are going to be busy. It's the potential for things to be busy. And I have said before that even though something should happen, doesn't mean that it has to happen. So, but I mean, I think the odds are probably very overwhelmingly in the favor of something happening, but it's not 100%. You remember last year we had that one invest area that got up to 80%, and I wrote a blog that said when 80% is not enough, because I guess it eventually became Hermine, and it just took forever. You know, even when it was up at 80%, I believe that was the one. But when you see this and you see the sea surface temperatures and the Pacific is getting ready to calm down, especially the East Pac, you know that it's just a matter of time that the Atlantic is very likely to become quite busy. But it could still take a week to 10 days or more. We'll just have to see. The Saharan air layer talked about it, but I want to show you. You see that the southern extent of it is at a higher and higher latitude. And as these tropical waves move off more and more to the north, they will moisten up the environment through here. And then your Saharan air layer southern boundary will be much farther to the north. And then you will open up this alleyway for more instability, more moisture, more energy. And you folks in the Lesser Antilles, things are good now, but that might change. We'll have to see. Looking at the Madden Julian oscillation, And quickly, what is this? Think of this as a sort of a widespread, favorable period of fertility in the tropics, of upward motion, where the air is rising and is able to spread out almost to the stratosphere and allow thunderstorms to develop and not be ripped apart. It's the opposite of convergence. Divergence aloft, where the air is moving away in the upper atmosphere, but together in the lower atmosphere. That's what fosters development, part of it anyway, of tropical cyclones. And the Euro, at least, not very enthusiastic with any MJO activity. It's all in the circle here for the next couple of weeks. And, of course, the GFS and its ensembles, it's not like this goes wild out into here, but I would like to see a little bit better agreement than what we do see if we compare the two. Again, here's the Euro, here's the GFS. The GFS more aggressive with the MJO. But what I take away from this is even though the European suggesting little MJO activity, sometimes you can have sort of a local enhancing effect, like through this Kelvin wave that's going to be moving through the Atlantic basin over the next 10 days or so, that it sort of sparks things off, and then you get the MJO moving into that direction, sort of a chicken and egg kind of thing. The Madden Julian oscillation does not always circle around like this on an infinite loop. Sometimes it goes into the null phase over here and then reemerges in a particular section or basin, and it becomes busy, like what we saw in the Pacific recently and the Westpac included. Looking at the models themselves here, this is, let me move this out of the way if it'll let me. So this is the GFS at the 850 millibar level, and we're going to go out to 5 days. And let me just point out what's what. It's been a little bit of time since we've looked at this. East coast of North America right there, the Carolinas, there's Florida, etc. South America, this is the west coast of Africa. And we're looking at the 5,000 foot level of the atmosphere. And all of these greens and yellows in here would indicate energy or spin, or what we call vorticity in the atmosphere. It's not rain. This is representing energy in the atmosphere. And there's our front, and there is Emily, tiny little Emily embedded on the front. Here's this big old Bermuda subtropical ridge, and this is energy out sitting off the coast of Africa. All right, so those are the players, and this is what it looks like when we animate it over the next 5 days. And we'll watch this a couple of times. We'll put this into motion. There's Emily right there. It moves off the Florida coast into the western Atlantic, far enough off the Carolinas that I don't think we'll have to worry about it too much. We'll let it reset and do it again. 90 to 100 hours, there's 120, and we start over. So again, watch right down here. There's Emily. You know, you see the vorticity, some energy there. It's round in its appearance. So it'll probably stay a tropical storm as it moves offshore. No threat to Bermuda, I don't think. And then it gets sort of absorbed in all this mess out here and dissipates. The next thing I want you to watch is right out here in the main development region. Now, we got burned on this, at least I know I did, several weeks back when it looked like the GFS was going to develop a July hurricane, and early July for that matter, and it never happened. It was overdoing it. Dry air won out. You know, the Europeans suggested it on one run as well, and you know, a lot of us in the hurricane world kind of fell for it. Since then, the global forecast system, the GFS here, has been upgraded, and apparently the phantom rogue cyclones have been diminished. They don't happen as much in the model. In other words, the model is supposedly more reliable. Well, that being said, let's look at what happens here as we go through time, and I want to zoom in a little bit. Over the next few days, the GFS is suggesting, once again, that a piece of energy is coming out of the MDR by day 5 is right there along 40 degrees west longitude. And I try not to go past 5 days. That's what the forecast is from the National Hurricane Center. They go out 5 days. You know, we could look and see what it looks like a week out, 10 days out. But that's so random. I mean, it really is. And it's not good. You don't want to speculate. And I think a 5-day forecast is plenty for now. So this is the energy coming across that we'll keep an eye on over the next few days. And if the GFS has been, quote-unquote, fixed, then maybe this energy that we're watching will have to be watched closer. and it's not going to have these false alarms anymore. You see it riding along that track that I've made there. So at day 5, towards the end of the week, we might have something else to talk about as Emily starts to depart the scene. And by then, of course, we will be in the early part of August, and the uptick in activity naturally starts to happen, and it would make sense to start watching the deep tropics a little closer. So, man, it's going to be a busy week. I sense it. You can feel it. It's coming. All right? So that's it for me for today. I appreciate you hanging around and watching and learning as I do. Remember, this is all sort of a joint effort. It's not just me talking to you. This is what I look at. And a lot of these particular graphics I put into our app. It's called Hurricane Impact under the tracking section, so that you can follow along the exact things that I look at when determining what impacts there may be, not only to the United States, but elsewhere in the Atlantic Basin. So it means a lot that you tune in and learn along with me. All right, have a great rest of your Monday afternoon. As always, thanks for tuning in. Again, I do appreciate it. I'm Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com, and I'll have another video update for you tomorrow morning.